where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebs and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and enthogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck, Rico Lamitte, and Nicole West, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you for getting high at 9 with us.
Oh, yeah, you guys. That is right. Good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, November 23rd. Today is Fibonacci Day. I have no clue what the hell that is. It's National Espresso Day, National Eat a Cranberry Day, and National Cashew Day. Thank you for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all of our social media platforms, especially right here on YouTube. We're live every Monday through Friday on YouTube and audio only on Clubhouse. And if you are joining us on Clubhouse, you can also participate in the show by raising your hand if you have a brief comment on the story most recently presented. But without further ado, let's pay a bill so we can get right back into the news.
Before we pay a bill, it's Fibonacci, and Fibonacci was actually a theory in regards to if you ever see the angle of the shell when they look at the Fibonacci sequence, it's actually very important information, but not Fibonacci. Let's roll that.
Fibonacci. Excuse me, Mr. Fibonacci family.
At True Classic OG, we live by one motto: stay true. We stay true to our legacy cut of True OG that's always fresh, piney, gassy, and delicious. We represent the spirit, hustle, and diversity of our great city of angels. And we stay true to the spirit of this plant, doing everything in-house to ensure that you get the highest quality and consistency with every batch. And that's what's made us LA's favorite OG. True Classic OG. Stay true, Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You guys know what's going on over here. It is coming up. She's a cannabis business consultant, an industry veteran, a bullshit buster, and a self-proclaimed general overall data bitch, boasting over 13 years in the regulated market, but with deep roots in the legacy industry as well. She's also now the COO at Butters in Santa Ana, and at one point in time, she did some crime for a cannabis crime. And did some time. That's right. It's none other than the Nicole West.
I'd still say I didn't actually do a crime, but I did do the time. So, so que sera, sera. But anyways, my headline today is actually coming out of marijuana moment, and it's in regard to Colombia, where Colombia senators approved marijuana legalization bill, which is very exciting. A bill to legalize marijuana in Colombia has been approved in a Senate committee for the first time, weeks after it also advanced in the country's Chamber of Representatives. Lawmakers have met several times in recent weeks to debate the reform proposal, which would amend the country's constitution to end cannabis prohibition for all adults. It passed the first committee of the Senate on Tuesday by a vote of 11-4, though there are still more legislative steps that must be taken before it potentially is enacted into law. We continue to advance the shift for drug policy, says Representative Juan Carlos Losada, the bill's sponsor. He said, following the vote, according to the translation, this is very important. At a public hearing in the Senate panel on Monday, Justice Minister Nestor Osuna said that Colombia has been a victim of a failed war on drugs that was designed 50 years ago, and due to absurd prohibitionism, has brought a lot of blood, armed conflict, and mafias and crime. The national government supports this draft legislation, Act for Adult Use on Cannabis. He said, we believe that it is very important in the step to be taken towards a responsible market and a responsible regulation that allows us to overturn the awful prohibitionist atmosphere. The proposed constitutional amendment contemplates the public health and economic impacts of legalization, as well as the ideological principle of individual autonomy. If enacted, officials would have 6 months to adjust the rules for the adult use market. Supplementary legislative analysis provides background of the history of cannabis policy in Colombia, while also describing reform developments in other countries such as Mexico and the United States. This legalization bill would support the right of free development of the personality that allowing citizens allowing citizens to decide on the consumption of cannabis in a regulated legal framework. It says that it would also mitigate arbitrary, discriminatory, and unequal treatment in the front of the population that consumes cannabis. The bill would restrict possession on public consumption at schools and at certain public spaces, and it also calls for public education campaigns and promotions of the substance for treatment. The Colombian Chamber of Representatives gave the initial approval to a legalization bill last month. In addition, Asuno said that the Interior Ministry also spoke in favor of this reform of the proposal at this time. The vote came shortly after a congressional committee advances in the measure at a separate legalization bill. The Justice Minister also discussed legislative legalization efforts at an event focused on cannabis reform on Saturday, emphasizing the need to enact policy change that promotes economic growth and public health. As lawmakers move to approve the reform bill, Asuno said that the government agencies will be working to facilitate a faster, less difficult licensing process. President Gustavo Petro, a progressive who has been strongly advocating for international end to drug criminalization since the beginning of he was inaugurated in August, has discussed the possible benefits of cannabis legalization. In September, the president delivered a speech at a meeting of the United Nations, urging members of the nation to fundamentally change their approaches to the drug policy and disband with prohibition. Petro also recently talked to the prospects of legalizing marijuana in Colombia as a means of reducing the influence of the illicit market. And he signaled that the policy change should be followed by releasing people who are currently in prison for cannabis. He also spoke about the economic potential of a legal cannabis industry where small towns and places like the Andes and Citron and Miranda could also stand to benefit from the legal marijuana cultivation, possibly without any licensing requirements. The president also signaled that he'd be interested in exploring the idea of cannabis to other countries where the plant is legal. U.S. Representative Jim McGovern, who carries the House Rules Committee, cheered the official swearing in of Petro, saying that he looks forward to working together to rethink drug policy and so much more. President Joe Biden, on the other hand, seems intent on perpetuating the drug war in Colombia with the U.S. military's support. He released a memorandum to the defense secretary in August that authorizes the interdiction of aircraft reasonably suspected to be primarily engaging in illicit drug trafficking in the country's airspace. Good thing they don't have Jet Suite X over there. He said that it's necessary because the extraordinary threat is posed by illicit drug trafficking to the national security of that country. And because Colombia has appropriate procedures in place to protect against innocent loss of life in the air and on the ground in connection with such interdictions, which includes effective means to identify and warn an aircraft before use of force is directed against any aircraft. As a former member of Colombia's M19 guerrilla group, Petro has seen a violent conflict between guerrilla fighters and non-corp military groups and drug cartels that has been exacerbated by the government's aggressive approach to drug enforcement. In 2020, Colombian legislators introduced a bill that would have regulated coca, the plant that is processed to produce cocaine, in an acknowledgement that the government's decades-long fight against the drug it produces have constantly failed. The legislation cleared the committee but was ultimately shelved by an overall conservative legislature. I'm super curious to see how that shakes out. Meanwhile, a U.S. congressional delegation returned from a visit to Colombia last month, and the congressman who was a part of the trip told Marijuana Moment that the theme of the discussion with officials in the country was, "We lost the war on drugs." And I just wanted to say congratulations to drugs for winning the war on drugs. It's been a long-fought war, but y'all deserved it. Good job, drugs. And I'm super curious to hear what everyone has to say. I hope that Colombia pushes this forward. and completely decriminalizes cannabis. I think it would be really amazing for them to be able to have, farmers be able to grow cannabis instead of coca. That would be a really great alternative, and in my mind, a pretty decent harm reduction for the population of the world if we could get farmers making it make sense. But we also do know the cost of a kilo of distillate versus the cost of a kilo of coca are drastically different. Super curious to hear what everyone else has to say on the stage. And I'm Nicole West, getting high at 9 with y'all.
You mean to tell me you don't get $36,000 a kilo for distillate, Nicole?
I think we've seen from some of the facilities and grows and things that have popped up in Colombia that they're making a major effort towards producing some great medical cannabis that they're exporting. So to me, it only makes sense that Colombia take the lead, and I would love to see them do well. If they're able to grow this stuff and export it to other countries, there's no reason why they shouldn't be using it in their own and really supporting their economy and giving people the medicine and the relief that their people need.
I agree with that.
Yeah, but prohibition never works. The two greatest spikes in crime and violence was number one, when we prohibited alcohol, and number two, when Nixon renewed the war on drugs. Those are the two biggest spikes in crime that we've ever seen. And as I look into the history of war on drugs, it's interesting in Mexico, because of their Spanish colonization, the Spaniards were a little more compassionate in their dealing with addicts. And Mexico was initially too. But when they tried to treat their addicts with more compassion, U.S. government said, if you don't get hardcore on them, be like us, more violent, we're going to cut off your opioids to your hospitals. And they did. And Mexico had to acquiesce and pretty much duplicate the war on drugs that how America was handling it. So, we talk about, everybody gets upset about immigration, but we helped to create the violence in Mexico with our drug war exportation.
That's right. That's right, Dr. Felicia. Prohibition doesn't do anything but spark violence throughout all of the countries that it affects.
I'm really impressed with, the awareness of the loss of the war on drugs by the officials in Colombia. I think that, some of those statements just really ring pretty heavily true, across the world, but in places like America and places like Colombia and Mexico, the idea, that we're going to control this thing that is like been around longer than our governments have, I think is a little bit unrealistic. But I definitely am curious to see what America would even look like if we did the whole Uruguay thing and just let everyone be free. If we turned into an Oregon where all drugs were free, how would that actually pan out? I'm super curious.
Well, you know what, Nicole, I may have a little bit of insight to that, because Nick Bradley shared in the Clubhouse chat. He says, look at Portugal. Their crime rate dropped by over 30% from 2005 to 19 because they legalized all drugs.
I think one concern behind all this would be the amount of education, because the stigma is going to follow Colombia no matter what, with the 100%. Cartels and the drug world. So that would just be one more stigma to add to the fight, which would be a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for entertaining me on that story and all the amazing insight. And Dr. Felicia, as always, for your sage wisdom. We're going to go ahead and hop to our next correspondent, the one and only Mr. Jason Beck, longest running retailer in the history of regulated cannabis, member of whatever political party might piss you off, smoker of the best weed in the world, unless you want to fight about it, and also potentially somebody that might annoy at least one person in the next 10 minutes, but he will get you high to make you calm down. So, Jason Beck, what do you have for us today?
Well, I will say, if I'm not annoying you, then I'm not doing my job. Because you know what I do? I love to annoy, because you know what it does? It breeds thought. But nonetheless, I will digress, because there's some big prohibitionist news, because there's a whole bunch of prohibitionists that are about to get outed, and you're about to know when every time that you purchase these products that you are contributing to prohibition as a consumer. Because Krispy Kreme, that's right, Krispy Kreme's is paying to keep weed illegal. That's right. The Big Donut is teaming up with the NFL, Big Pharma, the Methodist Church to defeat legalization in Congress. As Rico Lamitte loves to always say on this, follow the money. That's right, follow the money. It's the best known adage in journalism, and for good reason. People often lie, but a money trail gives you real clear insight. Just ask the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America, CADCA, which recently deleted a list of their major donors from their website. We emailed CADCA, a national anti-drug organization based in Virginia, to ask why they do such a thing, and they failed to respond, as you would typically imagine. The answer anyway seems to fairly be obvious. They don't want you to know who puts up the cash to keep cannabis illegal. That's right. Money talks and bullshit walks, but donors don't want to talk about it. But back in July, the Dodge journalist at Marijuana Moment first reported that CADCA was actively lobbying against the Cannabis Administration and Opportunities Act, the bill sponsored by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Democrat from New York, that would federally legalize cannabis. When Dr. Peter Grinspoon, a primary care physician, author, educator, and cannabis specialist, and also someone Sean Kernan loves to follow on Twitter, tweeted out his take on that story, he put the focus squarely on CADCA's donors. While it's no surprise that an overly anti-drug group would actively oppose legalization to see who's really calling the shots, you have to follow the money a little further down the line. What is the CADCA anyway? Well, founded in 1992, the CADCA's website says the nonprofit organization is dedicated to, in quotes, building drug-free communities, end quote. This is code for supporting an all-out, never-ending war on drugs. With headquarters located just outside Washington, D.C., CADCA claims to represent over 5,000 community coalitions, all committed to maintaining the status quo of marijuana prohibition, despite the decades of well-documented failure of the war on drugs. You might be surprised to know that a portion of your consumer dollars spent on Krispy Kreme donuts, Johnson & Johnson beauty products, and even your Sunday offering at a United Methodist Church service is going to CADCA to fight legalization. The donor list is no longer posted on CADCA's website, but we saved the screenshots and gathered the brand logos together in this handy guide, to which, Nicole, you have the picture of. CADCA's major corporate donors include marquee names from Big Pharma, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Purdue, Finance, Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, Barclays, the drug treatment industry, Carry On treatment centers, and other companies that directly or indirectly benefit from the war on drugs. Among the dozens of names on CADCA's donor list, one stood out as fairly insurrectable. That's right, Krispy Kremes. What on earth does a purveyor of collagely sweet corporate donuts have to gain from financially backing the ongoing arrest of cannabis smokers? We emailed Krispy Kreme's PR to find out, but they did not respond. The presence of the National Football League is a little surprising too. Ex-NFL players among the most highly visible advocates for medical marijuana and cannabis legalization, such as Ricky Williams, a pioneering advocate for cannabis, even during his playing, has become one of the leaders, voices of legalization in pro sports. Former Chicago Bears Super Bowl winning quarterback Jim McMahon has been outspoken about the relief he's gotten from cannabis, and have ex-lineman Kyle Turley, and as well as Eben Britton. Gannett is a media company that owns more than 100 daily newspapers and nearly 1,000 weeklies across 44 states, including USA Today, which actually endorsed federal legalization earlier this year. The other consumer product companies manufacture goods and services you may use every day. Johnson & Johnson makes Tylenol, Band-Aids, Neutrogena skincare products, and AccuView contact lenses. DirecTV provides cable channels to roughly 13 million Americans, while Scholastic is a book publishing company best known as the home of the Harry Potter series. That's right. The United Methodist Church teamed up as the only religious organizations on CADCA's donor list. And so they ask, why are you on this list, Methodist Church? Well, back in the 1970s, Methodists were among the most mainstream progressives in all of American churchdom. Back then, it was all acoustic guitars, felt banners, peace doves, and the groovy Good News Bible. Nowadays, the church's money pays for suits to lobby members of Congress to keep weed criminal. No surprise, Big Pharma sees legal cannabis a threat to its bottom line, so Pharma comprises the largest grouping of companies on the CADCA's donor list. CADCA's list of pharmaceutical donors include Pfizer, Purdue Pharma, Endo, Auburn, the Pharma Foundation, and Miami Lucan, also in Indivior, Alkermes, and I can't even pronounce this name. Malinkadort Pharmaceuticals. Purdue Pharma, of course, is the most notorious instigator of America's deadly opioid crisis in 2020. Purdue pleaded guilty to felony counts of fraud and conspiracy and agreed to pay a $5.5 billion with a B, the largest penalty ever levied against a pharmaceutical company. We're not sure why three of America's biggest accounting firms are spending the money to keep cannabis federally illegal. They are plenty of law-abiding, tax-paying clients who need accounting help in the nation's $25 billion legal industry. But nevertheless, we found PwC, Deloitte, and Ernst & Young among the donors to CADCA. The law firms on CADCA's donor list are dominated by big corporate law shops, not the small criminal lawyers who typically work with the people who get snared by cruel and racist marijuana laws. So maybe they just don't see the damage done to hundreds of thousands of Americans who are punished for activities that are wrongly labeled as criminal. Whatever the reason, here is what we found. Skadden, Ropes and Gray, Quarles and Bradley, Sidney Forgier, and Drinker, Tarplin, Downs, and Young, Bryan, Cave, Legden, and Passner. Once again, allow us all to reiterate, legal cannabis is already a $25 billion industry, and in 21 states, there are thousands of legal licensed companies eager to bring their banking needs to America's houses of finance. And yet we find Barclays, Deutsche Bank, and Goldman Sachs contributing to organizations that actively lobby against the federal legalization of cannabis. Honestly, we expected more addiction recovery companies to be on the list. They're traditionally among the industries more invested in keeping cannabis illegal. But the CADCA list, we only spotted Caron, C-A-R-O-N, the Pennsylvania-based addiction recovery organization with facilities in Florida, New York, Georgia, and Washington, D.C. Cardinal Health, the Ohio-based medical industry supply chain giant, is a donor to CADCA's anti-legalization campaign, and so is the CHPA, the Consumer Healthcare Products Association, a trade association that works on behalf of the dietary supplements industry. The CHPA's most recent round of grant funding, CADCA was the group's largest recipient. The category holds two of the most surprising organizations on CADCA's donor list. Get ready for this. The Moyer Foundation, which changed its name to Illuna back in 2018, is the nonprofit established by the former Marines and Phillies pitcher Jamie Moyer. The beloved slow ball player is known widely in both Seattle and Philadelphia for his crafty pitches and his charitable works. So why in this group is he on this list? Jamie and wife Karen Moyer, co-founders of the foundation, have long been involved with causes that benefit children at risk, and that includes children harmed by substances used and disorders and trauma. We would respectfully suggest that the children of parents sent to prison for possessing small quantities of cannabis, or children removed from their homes for under that same category, legalized regulating cannabis reduces childhood trauma. Also on the list, Truth Initiative, the nonprofit public health organization dedicated to ending tobacco use and nicotine addiction. Not sure why Truth Initiative is getting involved in cannabis, but nonetheless, why an anti-alcohol organization supports a fruit juice ban just because they both are drinkables. This has us all puzzled. But nonetheless, big name marketing firms aren't known for championing clients in the legal cannabis industry, and that's opened the door to a number of cannabis-focused startups gaining traction over the past few years. With new companies coming online in New York, New Jersey, Illinois, Michigan, and other markets, there are plenty of entrepreneurs who need help with branding and marketing and advertising. And yet we find marketing firms giving their money to CADCA in order to actively lobby against the federal legalization of cannabis. And for the same, Albison, Taylor, Kenks, CNC, and IMN Solutions. And what about the Red Hawks? Did you know that a portion of your Southeast Missouri State University tuition dollars is being donated to CADCA to help keep marijuana federally legal? Yes, we know it. Your state just voted to legalize statewide, and you probably voted in favor of it, and so thank you for that. But now go ask your SEMO Board of Governors why they're spending your hard-earned tuition dollars to support a national group that wants to keep putting people in jail for cannabis. And this is Jason Beck reporting for High at 9 News.
Jesus Christ, we got it. Everybody hates pot. You didn't have to read all 55 names off the list.
I think it's extremely important for people to know where they're putting their money at.
I want to know.
They can click on the link.
They can click
only
on
buying
the link.
Say it ain't so. I can't believe this. However, like you said, Jason, it is important for people to know what the fight is about. I mean, good Lord, cannabis needs to step up their game. You guys all talk about, follow the money. Well, follow the money to Washington so you can get in the damn fight. Because these corporations are the ones who are holding you back and are going to keep legalization from happening. For cannabis to keep, riding on the train of, do the right thing, wake the fuck up and spend some money like these guys so you can get legalization. That's all.
100%, Gretchen. Spend the money. Show me the money, baby.
We're going to have to be a little more creative because we don't have the money that they have. Their pockets are endless, infinite. There's infinite dark money. So we'll have to be a little bit more crafty. But it's interesting. Dr. Amos Williams said that if you want to understand any problem in America, you need to look at who profits from that problem, not who's harmed by that problem. And I had to give it out to Brother Rico Feel Better. He commented on this story back in July. I don't even remember the story coming up in this summer. So, the powers that be, they play up the stories they want you to know about, and they downplay the other stories that they don't want you to hear about, because the media is controlled by about 5 or 6 entities. So that's why you only hear about certain things.
Very true.
Agreed. And also, guys, while I agree that the cannabis industry doesn't have the deep pockets, we are cancel culture experts, unlike any industry I have ever seen. So I'm just saying, we do speak with our dollars in a different way.
That's so true. But we got to go thank you all so much for entertaining that story. But coming up next, she's a political strategist by day, a baker by night, a true female multitasker who can not only bake up a storm, but also knows how to make the sausage on Capitol Hill. She's the founder of Panoptic Strategies and our very own Washington insider. Taking off the apron and stepping on up, it is none other than the Gretchen Gailey.
Good afternoon. My headline is coming from Marijuana Moment, and hopefully will be a little briefer. Feds revise marijuana use options for job applicants due to changing societal norms. The top federal employment agency is proposing to revise questions that job applicants must face about past marijuana use in recognition of changing societal norms as more states move to legalize cannabis. The move, it says, may improve the pool of applicants for federal employee and federal contractor positions. In a notice set to be published in the Federal Register today, the Office of Personnel Management says it's hoping to consolidate various forms that applicants for federal positions must fill out into a new unified personnel vetting questionnaire that includes refined marijuana questions. OPM said, the proposed information collection will streamline multiple existing information collections as well as the renewal cycle for them, commensurate with ongoing efforts to improve personal vetting processes and the experience of individuals undergoing personnel vetting. For now, prospective federal workers are still prohibited from using cannabis regardless of state law. But the office signaled that past marijuana use would be treated with additional discretion compared to other federally illicit substances. Questions regarding illegal drug use of the PVQ are divided into separate areas to distinguish between use of marijuana or cannabis derivatives containing THC and use of other illegal drugs or controlled substances in recognition of changing societal norms. In addition, the PVQ had a more limited scope of questioning regarding past use of marijuana in comparison to other illegal drugs. Currently, use of marijuana by federal employees is prohibited, while past use of marijuana by applicants is evaluated on a case-by-case basis when agencies make trust determinations. Given the legal landscape at the state level regarding use of marijuana, distinguishing between past marijuana use and use of other illegal drugs on the PVQ may improve the pool of applicants for federal employees and federal contractor positions. The text of the proposed employment forms that would be affected by this policy change are not yet available, and a 60-day public comment period will open after the notice is formally published today. But on existing forms like the SF-85, questions about illicit substances are already somewhat disaggregated with respondents being able to check off which drugs they have used, indicating that future forms would distinguish cannabis even further. OPM said that the policy change is necessary in order to streamline the multiple existing information collections into parts that build upon one another according to the risk and sensitivity of the position, which will allow for greater efficiency in vetting processes and reduce the burden on individuals who move to positions of greater risk or sensitivity. The Biden administration instituted a policy last year authorizing waivers to be granted to certain workers who admitted to prior cannabis use, but certain lawmakers are pushing for additional reform. For example, Representative Jamie Raskin said at a congressional hearing on marijuana legalization last week that he intends to file a bill soon aiming at protecting federal workers from being denied security clearances over marijuana. We've got 2.85 million federal employees in America, and in my state, more than 100,000. And people have been disqualified from federal employment because they honestly admit on a security clearance form that they have once used marijuana, something that more than half the country has done. Just before the House passed the marijuana legalization bill earlier this year, Raskin filed an amendment to require federal agencies to review security clearance denials going back to 1971 and retroactively make it so cannabis could not be used as a reason to deny or rescind a security clearance. That measure was narrowly defeated in a floor vote, however. This is something that needs to start happening, and these are the ways that things get done in Washington. If you read in the fine lines, this isn't going to do that much. I mean, they're changing the questions around, but it doesn't say, oh, okay, federal workers, go for it now. But they are going to refine the questions. I think this is extremely important for folks to keep an eye out for the comment period and to be out there and say things. I think this will help lead to other issues such as questions on gun applicants for licensing. I think this is a necessary first step. As much else in the Biden administration, it's not going to be amazing, but it's something that needs to happen for Washington to start moving forward. This is Gretchen for High at 9 News.
Will this apply to White House employees as well, Gretchen?
I would say so, but again, they're going. This is all going to be at the discretion of the employer. Yes, they may ask slightly better questions and try and make. I like they said, the questions are not out yet, so I can't judge whether or not they're going to be extremely more helpful. But it is just ridiculous. You know, someone says, "Yes, I used cannabis," 10 years ago, and they can't get a job. I mean, that's just insane. And I do have friends who have had problems with their security clearances. I had a friend. I don't want to call him an idiot, but he used cannabis in Colorado, and then he told the truth. He works for the State Department. Had his security clearances revoked. He was working in I forget where, in a country in the Middle East at the time. He was pulled back. He was working in Jordan. He was pulled back to the U.S. and has been riding a desk for a year and a half while they do an investigation into him having used medical cannabis out in Colorado. And he's like, I thought it was legal. And I'm like, no, but it's a true thing. This does happen to people in Washington all the time, and this needs to be addressed.
Didn't they recently change something? I want to say in California and a couple other states for police. I know that there was an issue where for a long time, if cops said that they had consumed, they wouldn't get hired. But I know in California, you can be honest about it now and they will still hire you. I don't know. I want to say there's some other states, but
I think that didn't the FBI change their policy a number of years
for
ago
all their hackers?
For all the computer programmers. Yeah.
And while they're saying they're willing to consider your past use, but they're not saying go ahead and use now. That is not part of the deal.
That's fair.
They're not saying green light go.
Right. And even for medical patients, they're not saying green light go, but at least they're looking at it.
Well, let's roll our commercial, which talks a little bit about some fun stuff that's happening around the world with cannabis and seeds.
Want to grow some of the best weed in the world? Then you must start with the best genetics in the world. Go to www.dnagenetics.shop to order regular, feminized, or autoflower beans. All of your favorite DNA genetics cultivars such as Kosher Kush, Skywalker Kush, and oh yeah, Chocolate Truffle Shuffle. Boasting more cannabis awards for their award-winning genetics than any other company in the world. Remember to go to www.dnagenetics.shop HOP to see why our terps don't lie.
The thoughts and opinions in general shade thrown on the High at Nine News are those of the individual speakers, not any other speaker or its followers. The statements made do not constitute legal or accounting advice, and our speakers make no representation regarding the legal status in any country, substance, area, territory, its authorities. The views expressed in this room do not establish fiduciary relationships. Sponsors do not imply, constitute the endorsement by us, or expression of any opinion whatsoever, any speaker on stage. If you're an easily offended person, the show's probably not for you. Also, don't hang out with Jason Beck very long.
Oh, yeah, right. Flying into LAX, you want to taste some of the best weed in the world? Then stop by LAXCC, the closest dispensary to LAX, located at 8332 Lincoln Boulevard and open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Always make LAXCC your first stop when you touch down in LA and score like a winner. And don't forget to tell them I sent you and mention you'd like to get high at 9 for 10% off your full order.
Well, up next, we have the creative networking leading lady and CMO of Event High and the co-host and founder of the groundbreaking Professional Women in Cannabis networking series, Blunt Brunch, which I hope so many of you got to go attend this last week in Las Vegas. I heard it was amazing. Adelia Carrillo, what do you have for us this morning?
Hello, everyone. Today's article is Amsterdam Cannabis Expo 2022, latest scam to target industry. This was on businesscan.com. So a European cannabis conference that stated over 10,000 cannabis companies were participating is said to be the latest scam to target the industry. The Amsterdam Cannabis Expo stated that they were going to have this event happen on November 24th through the 26th of this year. It is now actually not being taken place at all, leaving a number of paid exhibitors scrambling to recover their lost cash. So BusinessCan has now heard from numerous sources who say that after paying their invoice to exhibit, communication was immediately cut and their money was disappeared. A little bit about the conference. The Amsterdam Cannabis Expo started advertising itself late last year. They launched a website. They had social media pages. They reached out to a number of organizations with sponsorship opportunities. Now, this 3-day event was advertised as including a prestigious award show. They said that they had a full agenda of speakers discussing the latest trends, offering exhibitors the ideal opportunity to showcase your brand to the industry. This website was actually just taken down this past week. It billed itself as the event as an annual conference welcoming thousands of industry professionals from over 100 countries. Now, soon after the website was taken down, we are starting to see other third-party websites pulling up this event and still marketing this event. One of the companies that came out and spoke about this situation was Orange County CBD. Now, Orange County CBD's Melanie, I don't know how to say her name, told BusinessCan that they first came across the event in May this year, when they were drafting up a list of industry events that they were looking to exhibit at. Now, they didn't say in the beginning there was no immediate red flag because the website was very well populated with information that you would expect to see. However, upon closer inspection, there were quite a few warning signs. Now, other businesses were contacted by the event directly as well with offers of sponsorship, though no information was given on what these packages would contain. Now, one company noted that from the start of the conversations with the event, 1-day tickets were supposedly already sold out and only 3-day tickets were available via a bank transfer payment. So those are already red signs alone. But there was also other signs that started to emerge. So after paying no further contact, no agenda was shared publicly to people or on the website. The event organizers were unable to answer general event questions. The floor plan looked so basic with every exhibitor the same exact shape and size and no company names on the floor plan. On top of that, every single communication that these businesses were having, nobody actually left their name on the signature of their emails. Now, all of these companies that BusinessCan actually spoken to regarding the scam said that their only contact with the organization was through a very generic email address, which was contact@amsterdamcannabisexpo.nl. And again, that there was no names given. And although Orange County CBD seized contact before sending any money, there was many other exhibitors who weren't lucky. One cannabis tech company, which actually decided to remain anonymous, said that they were in contact with the organizers as recently as October. But again, the communication stopped entirely as soon as their invoice was sent. They are looking to work with the bank to have their money refunded. However, they were just informed that the bank account to which the money was sent was now empty, leaving them little to no recourse. Now, this all came to head because of the actual venue. So the venue stated publicly about this event was RAI Amsterdam, and they're the ones that spoke up. It turns out that they were getting numerous calls and emails asking about this event. And as soon as they reached out to the venue, of course, stated that there was no event and this event didn't exist. The venue finally did decide to do a public statement on October 7th. They said that they received a few calls from exhibitors interested in attending this event, most with a request for more information, and one or two after receiving zero interaction from the organizer after prepayment. So again, this is how it brought up to the radar of the actual venue. They also stated that the RAI is not the only venue mentioned as a location. The organizer of this event seems to have sent out various news items or published items to maximize the attention. Again, Business Can has contacted the organizers for comment, and they have yet to receive a response. So this is Adelia reporting with the High at 9 News Hour, and I'd love to hear from the other correspondents on today. Do you think this is going to be something that happens more often, or better yet, how can businesses better vet these conferences?
Well, first of all, I'm not surprised to hear this. Unfortunately, it's not the first time I've heard something like this. I think that oftentimes event planners in this industry are stuck between a rock and a hard place. And Adelia, you probably, of anybody, knows better in this, because locking in a venue is incredibly hard. A lot of times venues give you a lot of false hope and then back out at the last minute. So I can imagine, or I hope, that the folks who attempted to put this on had the best of intentions from the get-go, but it doesn't seem to not responding to everybody. That's incredibly unfortunate. And a bad look on the rest of the industry.
So is this like the faux Firefest?
Well, I mean, Firefest actually did happen. It was garbage, but it actually did happen. I mean, people had to like do some blowjobs for water to get off the ship, but like it was a real thing. But the amount of things that I've seen genuinely want to be planned, get to the point of they're gonna do it, and they're in some negotiation with the event, the location, right? And so there's usually only a couple humans that are doing the communications for coordinating. So like if the deal fell through and maybe it didn't work out and they didn't end up, there's a good possibility that this was something that they at some point were trying to do and trying to make motion of, failed. And at some point, one thing that I often like to remind people is be cautious of starting to spend the money before you've gotten all the ducks in order, because what happens is when you have to go through and say, hey, we're not having this event, you have to be able to give these people their money back. But what happens is people start getting money in and they'll put deposits on shit. They'll put deposit on a caterer. They'll put deposit on the light guy. They'll put deposit on the DJ because they go, oh, I got to get all this shit planned, right? Well, they didn't finalize the location. A fun example, our little organization here, before used to be called State of Cannabis News Hour, and we were going to throw a fucking political event, and we put out a press release about a thing before we had a contract for our location. And then our location came and told us it was going to cost 3 times as much of what we had originally negotiated. Before we shook the hand, because we started putting out ads, they saw what was happening. So the possibility of that happening, like if you would have been looking from the outside, you would have been like, oh, they're not actually having a fucking event. You know, they're not really having an event. And so for that, like, I do say this is shitty and it is a bad look, and you're totally not wrong, but there is definitely a possibility. This is like when I read a government article about somebody who got caught with drugs, you know, like I have to go through my mind and be like, odds are I'm hearing about a third of what's really happening. And so there's a bunch of people that are probably pissed off, that lost their money, a really poor organized event, but there's not the idea that it was a full scam. I don't necessarily know, because I've seen enough of these companies, enough of these things. I mean, we were already asking for sponsorships before we had a fucking venue. I don't think we were trying to scam anybody. I don't.
No. And also, I mean, look at what happened with Green Street when they tried to throw their big event this year. They had been working very closely hand in hand with the city of LA, and then never got their event permit. You know,
really they were. They never had it finalized. They never had it finalized, and they were bringing in money. It's the same thing. It's the same exact thing.
That's what I'm saying.
They weren't working very close. They had a couple people that they thought were going to be able to get them through the process. Like, and the same thing keeps happening. Like but I don't think they were trying to be frauds.
To my
No,
understanding,
I don't think so either. It's just,
to my
it's
understanding,
a fine line, right? When you're planning an event on a short timeline, right? There's a lot of logistics, especially with our industry. Everybody wants us to jump through 10 more layers of red tape than any other industry on earth. It's like we've been, I don't know, it's not a conference for mass murderers. You know, I mean, come on. I don't know. Just, we could go on and on about this all day long, whatever.
in regards with Green Street, I've been told that there was an email with city staff that said that this event was going on and was going to be permitted, and then at the last minute they ripped the rug underneath. And that's, you know, now the city can do that. The city has every right to do that, and so it is what it is. You got to get your permit, you got to get your license if you want to have it, make it happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with everything that everyone has said. And for those who don't know, I'm also involved with CWCB. I'm their chief strategy officer. You know, we're one of the larger events on the East Coast. And it's always like money, planning, it all goes hand in hand. And sometimes you can't do both at the same time. And it's just, it can be frustrating. So I'm not officially going to say that this is a scam.
It's possible it's a scam, but it's possible.
It sounds very suspect to me. But there was one time I held an event at the Capitol. It was going to be the first ever documentary shown on cannabis at the Capitol. And the Jagoffs from the House of the Architects of the Capitol pulled it 3 days before, pulled my everything was approved, ready to go. I had people coming and I had to get lawyers involved. Freaking Nancy Pelosi, who I do not like, is actually the woman who saved my life because she was speaker and we ran it up. Cory Booker helped me out, Amy Klobuchar. I had to go through all these senators. I had to go through committees, through oversight to get one cannabis documentary approved. And they saved my bacon. But the House architects who runs the entire Capitol complex was like, whoa, 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 who approved this? And I'm like, you Jagoffs did. And then they're like, whoa, wait a minute. And it can be a nightmare. I had tons of people coming in from around the country for that. And I'm like, fuck me if I have to cancel this event. But it worked.
Jagoffs when you said that to them?
It was a mess. What?
Did you really call them Jagoffs?
Jagoffs. It's a Pittsburgh term.
Jagoffs. Jagoffs. Huh? That's an interesting spin right there, Gretchen. That's a real good spin. I like that. I might use that sometime.
I can get you t-shirts. I can get you pins. We really promote the Jagoff. That's our thing. Down. We lean into it.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Well, that was awesome. Thank you so much, Adelia. Coming up next, she's a cannabis product extraordinaire and a serial cannapreneur. She's the co-founder of Camilla, Cannagram, and the Women's Cannabis Awards competition. She's an Emerald Cup edibles judge with a goal to sample and
Jason.
Wait, did
Jason? Did you hit the mute?
What happened?
I have no clue. But she loves showing the world how cannabis, motherhood, and an executive lifestyle go hand in hand together. It is none other than the Mandy Tingler.
What's up, everybody? Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Happy Thanksgiving Eve. It's already Christmas here at my house because I'm already there. And so if you need a little Christmas in your life, know where to go. Anyway, today's story comes to us from the Cannabis Business Times. The headline reads, FDA warns 5 companies for illegally selling CBD food and beverage products. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration has issued its latest batch of warning letters to 5 companies that the agency claims are illegally selling CBD food and beverage products. The FDA issued the warning letters to 1111 Brands, Naturally Infused LLC, Newware Inc., which is a DBA for CBD FX infusions, and CBD American Shaman LLC, according to the agency's November 21st news release. These companies are selling CBD-containing products that people may confuse for traditional food and beverage, which is a result in unintentional consumption or overconsumption of CBD, FDA officials said in their release. CBD containing products in forms that are appealing to children, such as gummies, hard candies, and cookies, are especially concerning. The 5 warning letters dated November 16th also outlined violations related to the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, according to the release. These violations include the sale of unapproved CBD products that claim to cure, mitigate, treat, or prevent diseases, as well as adding CBD to animal foods. Officials said that in the release that CBD raises safety concerns, particularly with long-term use. The FDA has not found adequate information showing how much CBD can be consumed and for how long before causing harm, they said. This is particularly true for vulnerable populations like children and those who are pregnant. People should be aware of the potential risks associated with the use of CBD products. The FDA has requested responses from the companies that received the warning letters within 15 working days, according to the release. The responses must state how the companies will address the issues described in the letters, provided reasoning and support information to demonstrate why they think the products do not violate federal law. If the companies fail to respond to these warning letters, they could face legal action, including product seizure, according to the release. This is not the first time that the FDA has issued warning letters to businesses in the cannabis and hemp industries. The agency sent warning letters to CBD companies in March for claiming that products could cure, treat, or prevent COVID-19. The agency issued another batch of letters to Delta 8 product manufacturers in May for violating the FD&C Act and sent another set later in months to companies selling unapproved animal drugs containing CBD. Jonathan Havens, partner at Saul Ewing, said that historically the FDA has been limited in its enforcement regarding CBD products and has only issued warning letters to companies that make what he calls particularly aggressive therapeutic claims. However, the letters issued this month were a bit different, he said, because the warnings focused on the product format. They specifically addressed in a couple of letters beverages that FDA claimed consumers would be confused by, and it could lead consumers to unintentionally consume CBD, Havens said. What FDA seems to be saying, there is these look like your run-of-the-mill beverage products or food products that consumers might consume them and not know that there's CBD in them. And given what the FDA said, there's some of the safety risks around CBD as a protector of the public health. FDA thinks that's a problem. While Havens has doubts about whether consumers could actually confuse CBD foods and beverages non-infused products, he said it's an interesting argument by the FDA. It gives a little bit of new flavor for the FDA enforcement to say, okay, we've told you we're concerned about CBD before. We're going after these companies for aggressive claims, but now we're also concerned about the format these products are presented in, he said. Are consumers confused, and as a result, are they unintentionally consuming CBD? In FDA's eyes, might be a safety risk. The most recent batch of warning letters also focused on more product attractiveness or appeal to youth rather than past letters. These are adult products, and the way you market them matters, he says. Again, I don't want to say to any of the FDA hasn't talked about youth appeal before. They've certainly talked about that with regarding to Delta 8, and they did that again yesterday. But it really drove home the point that marketers and retailers need to think long and hard about how these products are positioned, particularly if they're sold through a store or online program. They're easily accessible, where someone under the age of 18 or 21 may be able to purchase them. The story goes on, but at the end of the day, these businesses are getting put on notice, folks. And, right or wrong, the concerns are real for some folks. So, what say you about it?
Dude, this is what I've been saying forever. Yep. The FDA's a coming. Exactly. Get ready.
Exactly, Gretchen. It's exactly what I've been saying myself. Watch out. If you think they're not going to enforce, you got another thing coming, because they enforce by the molecule, and it's in every single one of your products.
They may have no clue what they're talking about, but they're going to do it.
And they're going to do whatever they're going to do, and it's going to cost you money. Even if they're wrong, it's going to cost you a shit ton of money.
And everyone that's doing the, HHC, THCO, Delta 10, Delta 8, like all that stuff, that's where it's going to get really fucking crazy for you guys.
Mhm.
Like, I know CBD is definitely going to be one of the things that they start the regulation conversation about, but I think the conversion of a lot of those more psychoactive cannabinoids from CBD and putting it into products and selling it at like gas stations, I think that's going to be a huge issue.
Do you guys remember the double barrels, like the two vape cartridges and you
Absolutely.
take two at the same time? I feel like I feel like these manufacturers need to make a Delta 8 one and a Delta 10 one, right? And then you have Delta 18 and you'll be higher than everybody.
Oh my gosh.
Nicole, I think the products that you just mentioned are the ones that are the most worrisome. Those are
Yep.
the most worrisome.
Yep.
I can guarantee you people are not going to be putting a whole lot of CBD in their cosmetics and soda and juices because that's cost prohibitive. They can just put maybe a couple of milligrams in there and then charge a fortune, but it's these Delta 8s and other kind of products that are going to get the market in trouble. So
Yep,
that's where they need to be focusing.
And like if a child, I always look at it like this: if a child got like a bunch of gummies that were only CBD in it, they wouldn't be like But if a child got a bunch of gummies that had a bunch of Delta 8 and THCO and HHC, they could get really, really high. And like that conversation, needs to be had. And it's like, come on, anybody who thought that they were going to be able to sell these, heavily psychoactive cannabinoids under the guise of the Hemp and Farm Bill Act, I mean, you guys had another thing coming. You got another thing coming.
Yeah, I think they're wasting their time and energy, the FDA, pulling all these other things.
But Dr. Felicia, go ahead.
We are short on time. We're short on time. So we're going to go ahead and hop to Dr. Felicia Dawson. She's the CEO of Plants for Life and a dual board certified physician, cannabis educator, advocate, and consultant. She's an Atlanta-based powerhouse, and she's well known for helping folks understand and manifest the immense and innate powers over personal health by using cannabis as it was intended, as a medicine. Dr. Felicia, what do you have for us today?
Thank you, Nicole. Happy Wednesday, everyone. My story comes from Rheumatology Network. Cannabis significantly improves quality of life in women with treatment-resistant fibromyalgia by Lana Dykes. As cannabis use continues to rise worldwide, investigators question its role in treating fibromyalgia, a common pain syndrome that affects women twice as much as men. Treatment with cannabis resulted in a short-term beneficial effect on quality of life regarding its influence on pain, sleep, psychological, and physical domains in women with treatment-resistant fibromyalgia, according to a study published in Pain Practice. And this study came out of Israel, FYI. The prospective cohort study used the World Health Organization Quality of Life Breath Questionnaire, a simple validated tool that evaluates patient-reported quality of life to better understand the impact of treatment with cannabis in 30 women aged 18 to 70 with treatment-resistant fibromyalgia, defined as having exhausted pharmacological fibromyalgia treatment. The questionnaire includes 4 domains: psychological, physical health, social relationships, and environment. The questionnaire was filled out prior to cannabis initiation and at the end of a 1-month follow-up. Patients were able to choose their own route of administration, such as smoking, vaporizing, or ingestion. Patients were excluded if they were younger than 18, older than 70, had cognitive impairment, were pregnant, or were already using cannabis treatment. And I would have to say, in the actual paper, they do not list anything about what cannabis was used, how it was used, outside of what is in this article here. That would have been very instructive, in my opinion. The mean age of the participants was 46 years of age, experiencing pain and discomfort, dependence on medication, poor quality of life, reduced activities of daily living, poor general health at baseline prior to intervention. Environmental factors included access to health, social care, financial resources, transport, physical environment, were high, I don't know what that means, indicating fibromyalgia-related morbidity as opposed to environmental restraints. At follow-up, pretty much everyone did better in all 4 of those domains of physical health, psychological, social relationships, and environment. And they stated that the limitations were small sample size, short follow-up period, lack of a comparison group, those kind of things, and that further studies were indicated. Now, I will say that they did get a couple of responses that they were not anticipating. One was the dependence on cannabis medication, and there was an increase in negative feelings. And the researchers said that they don't know if that has something to do with potential emotional liability, because good feelings went up as well as bad feelings. So that it was kind of weird about that. And I think that because people were so enamored with the fact that nothing has ever worked and cannabis is working, that they were really, really attached to the cannabis. So those were the highlights of this study. And I'm Dr. Felicia reporting for the High at 9 News. What do you all think?
I think cannabis improves life, quality of life, just in general. So just to see a study that's proving that for a special condition, I think is just fantastic news. And thank you for covering this, Dr. Felicia.
Yeah, and fibromyalgia, FYI, is one of the first clinical endocannabinoid deficiency syndromes identified by Dr. Ethan Russo. So it makes sense that cannabis will work because your endocannabinoid system is already underperforming for whatever reason in this particular condition, along with IBS and migraines.
Fascinating.
Wow. Thank you so much for all of the insight on that, Dr. Felicia, and everybody today for what a really great show. We're super thankful for everyone for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Thank you to the haters for still talking about us. Huge thank you to True Classic, LAXCC, and DNA Genetics for helping us keep the lights on. To our correspondents for being amazing. To Cannabis for giving us a reason to do this, to Zaza Simone for holding it down for us in Clubhouse, and everyone else for helping us create a space in this mini-verse. Thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us.
You are tuned in to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebs and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and enthogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck, Rico Lamitte, and Nicole West, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you for getting high at 9 with us.